The moment Trump won the election, the German government fell. A few weeks later, the French government fell. The South Korean government is in crisis. What we saw since the election of President Biden is the commitment of the Western world as a whole. And President Biden seemed to manage to convince all the existing governments in Western capitals to follow his lead in targeting Russia, China, etc. In fact, doing so even more than Trump had done, doing so with greater vigor, greater commitment than Trump had done. He started a war with Russia. I think it was definitely a provoked intervention, provoked war, if nothing else. And of course, with China, he constantly ratcheted up the tension. Whole series of things: the small yard, high wall, export restrictions, the balloon incident, the repeated provocations over Taiwan. So this was the strategy on which President Biden seemed to set the Western world. However, that strategy was upset in two ways. Firstly, voters domestically gave their verdict and they were not in favor of this. When we started 2024, it was supposed to be a year of elections and everybody was looking forward to what would happen and blah, blah, and so on. The fact is that the year of elections has essentially put practically every government that followed Biden's lead in crisis. If you think about it, the moment Trump won the election, the German government fell. A few weeks later, the French government fell. The South Korean government is in crisis. The British government is in no great shape in the sense that it has become the most unpopular government that exists this early in its term, so within 5 or 6 months of being elected, popular support is lower than ever. So if you think of all the major governments, they are all in crisis. The Japanese government is in crisis. So you see one after another that this is not working. Oh, and Giorgia Meloni may be an exception, but she's an exception not because she's doing well. She's an exception because she was already an exception. She was already one of the few governments that had been elected on a ticket that was already opposed to Biden's style. There were ever greater signs in 2024 that Russia was going to actually win the war on the ground, despite the effort of the Biden administration to keep sending funds. And this Russian victory was becoming so apparent that in the last few months of 2024, it became routine to hear important officials in Western governments, and including the Biden government, essentially saying, giving indications, that basically we cannot continue this war forever. We have to withdraw. And quite frankly, I think that, I was saying in September and October that the Biden administration is only keeping up the appearance of continuing this war until the election. Once the election takes place, even if Kamala Harris wins, they will say, we can't do any more. They just couldn't do it before the election because doing it before the election would have sounded like defeat. So they had to keep up the appearance. So internationally, vis-a-vis Russia, this is not working. And vis-a-vis China, think about all the provocations. I mean, essentially, there have been two categories: military provocations and economic provocations. On military provocations, China has simply and quietly shown its own military prowess in the region. China is not, of course, expansive, but China has shown its commitment to defend all those trade routes, the region itself with the territory that it considers its own, from any Western or American aggression. So I would say that China's done very well on that. We've read about all the important advances in military technology that China has undertaken. All of that is fine. Although Chinese growth has slowed compared to the, say, 5-7 years ago, nevertheless, this is still a very good growth compared to the West. Chinese government has shown that it is capable of taking care of whatever local problems there may be, whether it is local government financing or real estate problems or what have you. It has shown it is capable of dealing with that. And most importantly, I would say that it has shown that it is capable, even in this context where the West claims that the Chinese government is in great crisis, of producing a far-reaching vision of this development with high quality productive forces, new quality productive forces, and so on, and projecting a completely new paradigm of what it means for a country to advance. That advance of that country is not supposed to be at the expense of the world, but the advance of that country is supposed to be shared with the world, creating a more stable basis for both China's advance and the advance of the world. So I would say in all of these ways, the Biden strategy has failed. And I'll just add one other thing. We are going through a liminal period, a transitional period between November 5 and the election and January 20 and the inauguration. And I believe that in this period, President Biden has been up to no good. He has, at the very minimum, been trying to present the incoming Trump administration with a number of fait accomplis, a number of situations that he will have to deal with that he cannot easily change, whether it is on Ukraine, on China, on Syria, on Israel, what have you. He has been trying to create this situation. I also wondered if he would try to create a situation, given how unhappy he is about having been forced to withdraw from the presidential campaign. And so Biden, when I say Biden, I mean the whole team. I think the whole team may very well have been trying to create a situation in which there is a war. And then you can say, well, there's a war on. We can't have politics as normal. We can't have an inauguration. Pure and simple.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹饪。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧！偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹饪。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧！